Board Game Arena just held its 2025 Games of the Year Awards. These games were selected and voted on by users to be the best board games released on the platform in 2024. So today we're going to go over each category of the nominations to not only reveal who won and what those games are about, but also who should have won. Games were rewarded bronze, silver, and gold in their respective categories, but really this is just a fun way to discuss some games we might not talk a lot about on this channel. So get ready to jump in the comment section and tell me how wrong I am, and then challenge me to a game in BGA, like an old-timey duel to the board game dev. So we start today's competition with the best two-player game on Board Game Arena, released in 2024. The nominees are Splendor Duel, Altered, Pocket Cats, and Battle Spirits Saga. And the winner went to Splendor Duel by popular user vote. Okay, first of all, let's get this out of the way. How Battle Spirits Saga made it into this list, it just blows my mind. Like, it's dreadful. I quickly went through the rules and played it a couple times, and it just felt like the most derivative card battler I've ever played. Also, it's really ugly. Like, it's super ugly. The game went by way too quickly to do any proper planning, and since the monsters were all attacking on the same turn they enter, you can't really formulate a response, which only increased the luck of the cards, I felt. So let's remove that nomination entirely and instead replace it with The Fox and the Forest, which is a much better two-player game. So instead, we're going to start the match today with Altered. Altered is a two-player trading card game in which each player brings a deck led by a hero card. In Altered, you'll lead two expeditions as they discover and explore the land. Now, Altered, unlike Saga, is a good trading card game, and its nomination kind of makes sense. It's sort of this game that sits between Magic and Lorcana in complexity. There's no direct attacking, which I don't like, but there's a lot of opportunities for, good, clean, passive-aggressive fun, since it's more of a race than it is a fight. It uses a sort of lane system like something you'd see in Star Wars or Flesh and Blood. I actually enjoyed this much more over Board Game Arena than I did in person, primarily because BGA handles all the region totals for me. It's a good game, but I don't think it deserves a medal for this year. Sorry, Altered, I know you trained hard for this, but you're gonna better luck next year. So instead, for our first medalist, we have Fox and the Forest. The entry that I put in there that nobody voted for. Fox and the Forest sees players doing the typical trick-taking stuff, but also using various characters to utilize their abilities. You'll score points by winning more than your opponent, but if you get too greedy and win too many tricks, you'll be punished like the naughty fox you are. Fox and the Forest is a great trick-taking game that even I enjoy playing, and I genuinely hate most trick-taking games. I like that every card feels valuable, and I love the odd number cards having these cool abilities. It made the decision space much more interesting and added a lot more depth to every card beyond their, their respective numbers. Plus, there are some wonderful opportunities to mess with your opponents and get into their head. Every time I gave Kim a win of a trick when she didn't want to win, I was just cackling like just a joyous asshole. So it's just a solid card game, and I'm happy I gave it a chance despite the hatred I have for the genre. A well-deserved bronze. So next we have a board game nobody is talking about, because if you go to the Board Game Geek page, it's empty, which is Pocket Cats. Pocket Cats is a super light tile-moving game where on your turn you flip a tile and then perform its power, and what you're attempting to do is to get your cats next to prey for points, but dogs can take out your cats, so be careful. So in Pocket Cats, you get this really fun little back and forth between you and your opponent, where you're sort of jockeying for position, but also trying to negate your opponent's cats with dogs, because whatever they point to is what they negate. It's fairly clever, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed playing it on BGA. Yes, there is a lot of luck in this game, but you can sort of navigate that luck by making sure you understand that the position of the tiles you flip may be more important than what is actually underneath that tile. The game is hitting much harder than what it has any right to do, given how bloody light it is. I encourage you all to check it out and just play a single round. You can learn the game in 2 minutes. Pocket Cats deserves the second place. Silver. Now, of course, that leaves Splendor Duel. Splendor Duel is a race to victory where players draft gems from the common board and use the gems to purchase cards that will grant them bonuses, royal favors, prestige, and even more gems. Full disclosure, I have never been a big fan of Splendor. I bought it like everyone else when it was crazy popular, but the game always left me feeling a little bored and a little unfulfilled. I think Splendor Duel is a better version of Splendor, and it may be simply because it adds a fun little spatial puzzle in the game, since on your turn you can select 3 gems in a row to add to your collection, and you get these wonderful moments where I'm playing paying extra attention to my opponent and seeing what they want, and then making sure I take it from them, because again, I'm a joyous asshole. Also, they added new ways to win the game, which makes the entire experience a lot more enjoyable, since it creates a bit more tension and adds versatility and strategy. I don't know if this is one I want to own physically, but I do enjoy playing on BGA. I think this is a great choice for the best two-player game. Splendid Duel takes the gold in a well-deserved fight. Now, before we move on to the next category, we need to have a brief rant segment. I've always hated how a lot of people classify two-player games. It always seems to go to games that exclusively play two players. But if I want to know the best two-player game, right, as a user, I don't care if it plays more than two players. The best two-player games in our hobby are honestly the ones that just happen to play more than two players. Like Five Tribes, War of the Ring, Castles of Burgundy. You know, I can't be alone in this. Let me know in the comment section if you agree or disagree with that, because I want to make a list of the best two-player games, and I want to know if I should be limiting it by the play range to be exclusively for two. So let me know in the comment section. Now we move on to the best casual game. The nominees for this category are Castle Combo, Captain Flip, Super Mega Lucky Box, and Flowers. For the winner, BGA users voted on Castle Combo. So let's start with Super Mega Lucky Box. Super Mega Lucky Box is a lighthearted bingo-style card game where players flip numbered cards, mark them on their boards, and unlock exciting chain reactions of bonuses. I dislike this game, so much so that I'd love to just boot it from the competition entirely. But I don't want to do that twice in a row, because it casts a negative light on the integrity of this very sacred board game tournament. Super Mega Lucky Box sees players crossing off numbers off their own personal cards based on revealed cards. It was like this really brain dead and boring version of bingo. But without the beautiful ambiance of cigarette smoke and just depression lofting through the air. I didn't really care for the added lightning bolts, which let you change a card number, despite the fact that they do provide something. They provide something to ponder over. It felt like a party game without the actual party, you know, because there was no interaction between players. You know, I didn't have fun with this in person at a buddy's house, and it just played like crap when I played it on BGA. So you don't get a medal. So let's go to an actual game now, albeit one that also is kind of lame, Flowers. In Flowers, you select from 2 face-up cards, and what you're trying to do is make sure by end of game that you have, 4 4s next to one another, 3 3s, etc., and you have 5 of a single color next to one another. It's a mildly clever game that plays very quickly. Flowers requires a lot of careful planning and forward thinking, which I admit is enjoyable, and if these sort of spatial puzzles interest you, it's certainly worth checking out on BGA. The worst part is that you're going to make mistakes and end up blocking a number before you completed it. But I suppose that's part of the fun. As much as I'm not the biggest fan, I do see this as a worthy third place, because I can see a lot of people having, a quick little bit of fun with this between, breaks or on a lunch break. So you get a bronze. You absolutely get a bronze. Next, we have Captain Flip. In Captain Flip, players take a tile from the bag and they decide if they want to play it as it is or flip it over to see what's on the other side. They place the tile onto their board and then gain coins depending on the powers of the characters they played. Finish 4 columns and the game ends, and whoever has the most coins is the winner. Captain Flip is a game, it sounds strange, but I'm not sure I want to own. But I do love playing it on BGA because it plays so damn fast, and it's filled with these tiny little adrenaline hits and moments of tension. It's a really light and really rewarding game with some great push your luck moments. Like when you have 2 cannons and you know the third one will kill you, but you're behind in points, and so you take that risk and flip it anyway, only to get another cannon and then stop playing for the day because your sanity, you just can't take it anymore, and you're going to go back to work very angry. And although it's a very low interaction game, you are racing people sometimes to fulfill some columns, and you are checking to see what they have. It's minor interaction, but at least it's something for something that's so quick. All in all, it's just really good, silly fun, and I think this is one that everyone has to play, right now. I am not joking, okay? Pause the video and just go play a match if you haven't already. Okay, you done now? Good. Did you like it? Because I think this is a well-deserved silver medalist. And finally, this of course leaves our gold medal winner, Castle Combo. In Castle Combo, players draft cards to build a 3x3 tableau to trigger instant effects and endgame bonuses, all to get the most victory points by the end of the game. Castle Combo just took me by complete surprise. I knew nothing about it, but I wanted to play every new game released on BGA for 2024 for my tier list video, And after the first game of Castle Combo, I fell in love. I fell in love. Considering the ease of the game, there is a good amount here to keep me invested on every single turn. And more importantly, aware of what my opponent is doing, because there is a good amount of interaction with people at the table in a roundabout way, which I find fairly rare in these relatively simple card games. Hate drafting is so incredibly satisfying here, and there is some great positioning possibilities to make your opponent sort of waste keys to get what they want, because they can only draft from one of the two levels, and so you just kind of make sure you put it on a level that they don't want it to be at. Also, there are a really good variety of scoring methods, which again, for a simple card game, it's impressive. I love how each card has its own abilities that you kind of have to be aware of, which also keeping in mind its scoring objectives and placement, and its shield type, and its cost. There's a lot to follow that makes the game really engaging and interesting. You know, I think this is one that is punching well above its weight class. So this, to me, is an easy gold medal winner. Well deserved. Now we move on to what BGA refers to as regular games. Whatever that means. And here our nominations are Harmonies, Cartographers, Middle Ages, and Loot. And users gave the win to Harmonies. Now looking at these nominations for best regular game, I'm starting to think if maybe my view on a game's weight are somewhat skewed, because I view games like Cartographers and Middle Ages as relatively light. And I'm assuming regular sort of means mid-weight, but we'll stick to their system and not remove any of them because they're all pretty decent games. So first we have Cartographers. Cartographers is a flip and write board game where players take on the role of map makers, drawing terrain types on a personal grid based on cards revealed each round while aiming to fulfill scoring objectives. This is a game Kim really loves, although honestly I think it's just the drawing portion that she really likes. It's a game where a bunch of people can all play at once, drawing on their map a choice of shapes that the flip card reveals. It's this sort of like cute little puzzle game that adds a bit of mean spite here and there through its monsters, since you can draw on other people's kingdoms and kind of mess them up. It's certainly gimmicky, but it's fun for what it is. I will say, however, that while we do enjoy this one and we own it, it's not particularly a good game on BGA. And I think a big part of that fun is it's drawing your personal fantasy map, like physically drawing. At least that's how I feel. So sadly, despite being a good game, I don't think Cartographers is going to make the cut this year. Next, we have our first medalist, Middle Ages. In Middle Ages, you are the head of a fiefdom in your future lands, developing new prosperous buildings, assaulting neighboring fiefdoms, and just placing loads of tiles. This game feels like really similar to King Domino, but with some extra meanness tossed in, which I enjoy, since you can attack the tiles of your opponents. It's a very simple game with a good amount of interesting maneuvering for future turns that can leave you feeling pretty satisfied by the end of the game. I think it deserves a well-earned bronze. It's a good little throwaway game to play when you don't have much time in your day for anything else. I wouldn't call this a regular game, but it is a good game. So next we have the game that users selected to win, Harmonies. Harmonies is an abstract strategy game that sees players drafting a set of 3 discs at the start of their turn, which they'll use to place on their board to complete various patterns required by animal cards they've drafted. This is a game Kim and I really liked. If you want our full review, you can check it out on our channel for more information on the game. It's just a really good abstract game that really gets the brain burning, and it's almost perfect playing on BGA because it's just so damn fast when you play it virtually. And given that there is almost no interaction anyway in the physical copy of the game, you don't really lose anything in this experience. I think this is a well-deserved silver. Finally, we have Loot. In Loot, players control a horde of Vikings, raiding the mainland, capturing buildings, stealing the Englishman's cute little sheep, and just racking up as much riches as possible while getting in your opponent's way at every turn till you are crowned Jarl of the Vikings. It was really tough choosing between Harmonies and Loot, because I really enjoyed both of them. Like Harmonies, we have a full review of this game on our channel. It's a fairly abstract game that sees you placing Vikings on a shared board to take control of tiles, which you then place on your own personal board to surround victory tiles. That act as a sort of like contract that you have to fulfill. But the most fun part of this game is finding ways to block your opponents off on that public board and take what they need and really just be a true Viking, or at least what I imagine to be a true Viking. Because knowing exactly when to use the 3 one-time powers this game provides you, it's a really fun tactical exercise where you're sort of agonizing whether you should use the double placement so soon, even though you know it will snag you that much needed tower, but doing so will mean that you'll have no countermeasure for if your opponent attempts to block you from that castle tile you've been eyeing. Loot is a much deeper game than it lets on, and I encourage everyone to check it out. I think this is a really good gold medal winner. Our next category is the best animal theme game. Yes, that's right. This category is very dumb and it does not interest me at all. I'm not really sure why it's even here. I guess they just felt it was cute. On a positive note though, I am pleased that none of the nominations feature anthropomorphic animals. This is a trend I am not enjoying in gaming, and if you're a developer or you're a publisher and you're encouraging these obnoxious creatures, just stop it. Just stop it. Get some help. The nominees for this category are Cat in the Box, Mountain Goats, New York Zoo, and The Wolves, with the winner going to The Wolves from the users. So the big loser of the bunch, in my opinion, is Mountain Goats. Mountain Goats is a quick and competitive dice rolling game where players race to climb mountain peaks, control scoring spots, and knock opponents down to secure the highest points. If you haven't played it, it's really similar to Can't Stop. You're using dice combinations on your turn to move your goat up various numbered columns. You have no way to mitigate these dice, so you'll lose due to random luck most of the time anyway. And when you roll multiple ones, you can change the die results on all but one of the rolled ones, which always felt really, really strong and really annoying when it wasn't you that was doing it. I hate this game. Despite the great opportunity for meanness the game provides, where you can sort of like position yourself so that your opponent is stuck at the top of the columns as you're sort of purposely and slowly crawling up and leaving them with like absolutely nothing to do in their turn. But if you're on the receiving end of that, though, it really sucks. But despite that, no medal for you, Mountain Goats. Go away. So next is Cat in the Box. Cat in the Box is a mind-bending trick-taking game where players assign colors to their played cards in real time, creating a Schrodinger's cat-inspired challenge of deduction and strategy. So you get your cards, discard one, then try and predict how many tricks you'll win. And the neat thing is that the person playing decides what color they have, because all the cards themselves are black. As I've mentioned, I hate trick-taking games, for the most part. Kim's family plays a few with a standard deck of cards, and I want to die by about the second or third hour of playing with them. No offense to them, I love them. It's just those trick-taking games. I don't remember what they're called, but I hate them. Cat in the Box, however, is clever though. It provides a good amount of strategy and creativity for a genre that is kind of oversaturated, and that's a pretty good accomplishment. It's not a game for me, but it's worth checking out, and I do think it deserves the bronze here. The animal theme competition this year, it's not really stellar, sadly. Next, we have New York Zoo. New York Zoo is a tile placement and animal park building game where players strategically fit enclosures, breed animals, and optimize their zoo layout to be the first to complete their board. So this is yet another tile laying game by Rosenberg. I'll say it again, this is a really boring category because like Cat in a Box, I barely even like this game. I know most board games are in fact a form of a puzzle, but typically a lot of that is sort of hidden behind mechanics and theme. But here, that puzzle is just laid bare. I just find this like Tetris-style polynomial crap tedious most of the time, like especially when it's playing front and center in the game. Like it's really boring, and the replay value of this game, especially online where you'll go through a lot of games, it's just really bad. Every game felt the same, and it didn't feel like there was anything new to discover. The spatial puzzle is certainly challenging, it gets you thinking, but it's not an enjoyable process to me, and the breeding portion of the game is pretty straightforward and obvious and doesn't seem to add depth that would be nice in what is otherwise a fairly simple game. Listen to me, this is a medalist, and I'm just trashing on the game. A silver, I guess. I told you, I don't like this category, and I don't like most of the games in it. Finally, we have The Wolves. The Wolves is a pack-building area control game where players attempt to claim as much territory as possible, recruiting lone wolves to their pack, hunting prey, and just trying their best to deal with the cards you have. The Wolves is a pretty good game. It's super easy to learn and adds a good amount of strategy here and there. You do have to think well ahead on any given turn because maneuvering in this game is pretty much everything, and that can be an enjoyable process. It also has a pretty good pace to the game, which is fitting. And I like the player-controlled ending because you're constantly thinking about it, if you should slow down or accelerate the game. Should you spread out your pack or keep them concentrated? And there's a lot of interaction here beyond simply having more wolves surrounding an objective, because you can take control of other people's wolves, which is always fun when you do it because, well, it's just fun to be mean sometimes. It's a pretty dynamic game, and I think it is well deserving of the gold medal here, even though I actually don't even love this game. I kind of like it, but not really. As I said, this is a really weak category. So let's just leave this one behind and move on to my favorite category. Now we have the Best Expert Games, which are simply the heavier games section on Board Game Arena. And the nominees are Darwin's Journey, Age of Innovation, Terraforming Mars, and River of Gold. And users gave the win to Darwin's Journey. So it's so strange to see Terraforming Mars on this list, but remember, this is based on when the games were released on Board Game Arena and not in general. Let's start with Age of Innovation, because it feels like the weakest of the bunch, despite it being a reimplementation of a great game, Terra Mystica. Age of Innovation is a deep and strategic civilization building game where players customize factions, develop technologies, and expand their influence across a modular map to achieve dominance. I think Innovation is well behind Gaia Project and of course Terra Mystica itself, so it's going to get the runner-up prize. It just adds a lot of things that I don't feel make the game any more strategic or the choices on any given turn any more entertaining or engaging. The book resource adds a bit more options on a turn, which is nice, but I really miss the individual races. I know the game adds the ability to sort of build your own race and powers as you progress, but it's not as enjoyable. Yeah, this one to me is a bit of a flop. So moving on to our first medalist, we have Darwin's Journey, which actually won gold in the original BGA awards, which is wild. I had no idea this game was so popular. Darwin's Journey is a strategic exploration and adventure game where players take on the role of naturalists, conducting research, gathering specimens, and advancing Darwin's theory of evolution while navigating the challenges of a scientific expedition. Darwin's Journey definitely feels like one of those like kitchen sink Euro games where you're just sort of bombarded with so many different mechanisms, and it doesn't really start being enjoyable until the third or fourth play. It's because the game is really combo heavy, but you really need to know the game to get yourself in that position. And when you are, it does become a lot more fun. Actions are just like constantly chaining other actions, which can also make downtime in this game sometimes just a complete drag. I actually prefer this one virtually over physically because I gotta tell you, watching a person perform a million like cascading actions on their turn after you just did like one little simple like pathetic thing, well, it's agonizing. It's agonizing. It's an interesting game though, because although it feels like you're constantly being rewarded, it's actually a very like tight, restricting game where you're not going to be able to do everything you want, and especially in the early and mid game. You are super tight on money to do all of the best actions. It's just a lot of fun and clever mechanisms here, all sort of working together pretty damn nicely. So definitely have a look at this year's bronze medalist. Next will be complete blasphemy for most people, but it's Terraforming Mars. Terraforming Mars sees players working as corporations to develop and terraform Mars by managing resources, building infrastructure, and completing projects to increase the planet's habitability, all while playing loads and loads of cards. Listen, I really like Terraforming Mars, and all the games that reviewers told me were killing it, like Ark Nova, did not indeed kill it. And I still own it and play it now and then. But I have found a new love for it on BGA. It's a really good implementation, and it handles all those fiddly, annoying bits really well. And it's so infinitely easier to see all your cards sort of laid out in front of you instead of messing around with them in your hand. But the game itself, I mean, what more needs to be said about Terraforming Mars? It's a really good game with loads of depth, fun combos, and variability between games. But in my opinion, it just couldn't beat our next game, which is River of Gold. I love River of Gold on BGA. I think it's so fun to play virtually. In River of Gold, players use their boat to travel down the river, performing various actions such as developing new ports, markets, and various other buildings, as well as doing their best to grow their wealth and visit nobility, all in an effort to get as many points as possible. There is a good amount of player interaction in how you're able to use other people's buildings. It reminds me sort of Caelus, both in movement and in shared building use, although this is a much nicer version because Caelus is insanely savage. There is also a good amount of varying mechanics here that all sort of work well together to create a fairly relaxed and enjoyable experience that isn't so simple that it's boring, but not too convoluted that it's sort of jarring and overwhelming. The area control is pleasurable instead of tedious, and you're still rewarded for moving up those influence tracks regardless of whether or not you're in the lead at the end of the game, which is nice. It's just a really good game that I would actually classify more as casual than expert, but I didn't make the nominations or the categories, so River of Gold, I think, takes the gold. And those are this year's true winners of the Board Game Arena Awards. BGA is an amazing platform that I'm sure all of you are already playing on endlessly. And then, like myself, you probably have like dozens of turn-based games on the go at any given time. So that's all for this video. Let me know in the comment section what you agree with or disagree with, or whatever your favorite game is to play on BGA in general. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
I accept.